We'll close the windows so we can have some peaceful time, and they will also reduce the volume after their introduction. No, keep it a little bit for some time, just 5 minutes at least, and then you can switch this off, or you turn it the other way around. Luckily it's still fresh time, the summer didn't start, so it's not need. Okay, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Amagyanatimindasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurummilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishnam Sapitamina Bhutale Swambhuvakaranayam Dadati Swapadantikam Amdeham Shigro Shutapadakamalam Shigro Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitam Shah Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwavanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpataru Vyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaya Vacha Patitam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita. This is chapter 6, verse number 3. Oh, are they late or the time here is late? Or two, actually. Anyway, whatever. Okay, so reading from the text. So before we do that, does anyone can recollect anything from the last Thursday? What was mentioned in the text number 2? Sagar.
It was that Dharma Yoga. Dharma, which we do.
Okay.
Dharma Yoga, which we do. Even if we perform it in Krishna consciousness, it is like good. It is a nice. It is the biggest yoga because we are doing it for Krishna. But still, it is not as good as sannyas yoga because in that also we are anchoring for karma. It was better in itself, according to what I read. And like sannyas yoga.
Something, maybe. Okay, anything else? Anybody else can recollect something?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, can I try?
Yeah.
Prabhuji, last week we had talked about yogis who restrain their senses. So, and in comparison to that, we had talked about the devotees who engage their senses in the service of Krishna. So, the point is that the yogis, they restrain their senses. This is with respect to the material. They is with respect on the material plane. Whereas when the devotee engage their senses for Krishna, they are actually restraining their senses also. So a devotee is a sannyasi and yogi both at the same time. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, so the idea is that one should not see what is mean activity. Spiritual life doesn't mean inactivity. It's just renunciation. We just renounce. We just do nothing. That's not what spiritual life is. Spiritual life means to become active, but active for God, not for our own urges. That is what spiritual life is. Otherwise, if it's just acting upon the different urges that we have, bodily urges, then that's material. That's completely bodily. But if we utilize even bodily propensities or connect them to Krishna or utilize them for Krishna, then that is termed as spiritual. So somebody who is even sannyasi, who is renunciate, is definitely performing certain kind of duties as well. Sannyasi also has a duties to perform. It's not that he is above absolutely all the rules and principles. He also has the duties to perform. So therefore he's active. Active but in the spiritual sense. Not just as Arjuna had taught earlier, I will just renounce everything and I just go to forest and meditate. Even that is not final conception or complete conception of the sannyas. But of course, Krishna didn't advise him to do this. Krishna said, better to perform one's duty, but for the higher cause. That's far better course of action. So let's see today this verse number 3. It said, Arurukshor mune yogam karma karanam uchyate yoga ruddhasya tasyaiva shama karanam uchyate. Translation: for one who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. So here it might seem to become a little bit complex discussion happening. Krishna explaining what is dhyana yoga. Dhyana yoga means what is yoga. Like yoga meaning having all these 8 stages, different 8 stages. Yam, niyam. Yam, niyam means something that is to be done and something that's not to be done, right? First have do's and don'ts. And then asana, like I'm now in asana, kind of. If I wouldn't have this support behind, then I have to be like this, sitting in the lotus posture and being able to sit like this undisturbed for long period of time. And then pranayama means, breathing exercise. And then dhyan, what is that? Pratyahara. And finally samadhi. All of these different stages are there in yoga, but they're definitely very difficult to perform. Mostly people come to the level of pranayama. Not beyond that, because in this age, that's not a process that is written. Vishwamitra Muni took 60,000 years to gain perfection. So, what does that say? 60,000. So, you don't even live up to 100 years, what to speak of anything beyond that. So, it's not a process for this age. We can get some benefits, but it's not a process of self-realization. And that is also stated in the Shastras. But Krishna explains this process because it can help, definitely to some extent it can help if one utilizes it. But it's not a recommended process, and that we will see at the end of this chapter. Arjuna will point out, saying that Chanchala Himana Krishna Balavat Balapadra Pramarthi Balabhadra. Bala means strength, it's so powerful. Mind is so chanchala, it's very restless. He said it's impossible for me to control my mind. Can any one of you control your mind? Like within few seconds now, you were here and then you were at how many places and thinking about how many things. Mind's incredible. It just wanders everywhere. So Arjuna says, but this process, it would be easier to control the wind. And remember, that was last year, one of the first storms that came to Mumbai. They said it's one of the strongest in a couple of years, right? It knocked down so many trees, and it was funny, it was very strong. Even in our ashram, we had a water tank. It knocked down the water tank. Luckily, nobody was down at that time. It's pretty heavy. Heavy wind. And it knocked down the chakra from the tower. That's very inauspicious. But it was strong wind. So Arjuna said it would be easier to control the wind than the mind. So I said, by this process, very difficult. And then Krishna points out, Abhyasena tu kante vairagyena chakriyate. Actually, yes, it is difficult, but by suitable process and by detachment, one can control the mind. So now what is that suitable process? That suitable process, this is what now we practice. It's called chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Maybe you can keep it open, let me just if you want. No, the other side. let some air flow. Okay. And this is the process. And we see that it purifies us from all the anarthas, unwanted qualities that we have, and enables us somehow or other to focus on the lotus feet of Krishna. So Krishna was pointing out that yes, this dhyana exists. It is a process, definitely, but there is always something to be considered, and that is time, place, and circumstances. It's not always everything the same. Dharmas are changing. There are different dharmas for different circumstances, different dharmas for different occupations, different dharmas for different times. There are different dharmas. Of course, there is a Sanatan Dharma, that is our original nature that is there, that never changes. That's why it's Sanatan, but other dharmas do change. So therefore, at this age and time, it is not possible to perform this kind of, this kind of yoga practice. And as we go, we will keep on hearing. Krishna explains what the yoga practice is. It is very demanding, and if Arjuna couldn't do it, then what about us? What is our position? What is our hope, so to say? Yeah. And then Krishna is pointing out that there are so many yogis, and definitely one should be a yogi. One definitely should be a yogi. So now what yogi means? Yogi means... And then at the end, Krishna concludes that what is that yogi that Krishna is expecting us to be, saying that yoginam api sarvesham adgattanantaratmanam shradamam bhajate umam samayuktatamo mataha. That one who fully dedicates his mind and activities unto me. And Krishna says, in my opinion, that kind of yogi is the best. And that bhajate means rendering service. So that means bhakti yoga. So that means the process that we are practicing. So that kind of yoga. So that's something that we can do. We can engage our mind, we can engage our intelligence, we can engage our senses. We can engage that in Krishna's service, and by Krishna's mercy again, we have a Pancharatric process in Bhagavat Vidhi also, wherein we can engage our propensities, psychophysical propensities, both. We can connect them to the Lord, can connect them to Krishna. So that's why here it said that one who is neophyte in the Eightfold Yoga system, work is said to be the means. So one has to work initially. One cannot just renounce and then hope to advance spiritually. It doesn't work like this. It's much easier to connect the work and purify that work. It's better, rather than just giving up everything. Can you give up everything? You just give up everything, and then after a very short period of time, you have to start doing something. The mind will impel you to become active in some way or the other. Or if nothing else, the mind itself will start speculating so many things. So one can't refrain from work. Even just, Krishna is going to explain, even just to maintain this body and soul together, you have to work, no? You have to do something. You have to earn money to buy a food, if nothing else, no? You have to work. Example is given also, lion is the king of the jungle, right? But is he just sitting and opening his mouth and all the animals are getting in? Is it like, no, he has to work very hard. Sometimes he has to fast. Very long fast he has to undertake also. There's nothing to catch. There's nothing to eat. So he has to go and hunt. He has to endeavor very strong. So that's why one has to work. One has to maintain even this body. But the idea is that that work should be in connection to God. Otherwise, then where is the point of anything being spiritual? When we connect something to, like we connect wires to electricity, and then we can gain some electricity, right? If there is no connection, there is no benefit. So similarly, any work that we perform, if there is no connection to God, there's no benefit. It's not spiritual. So in the beginning, when one is not in this Eightfold Yoga system, if one is not trained properly, one is not purified sufficiently, then one still has to continue being active, but under certain principles, under certain rules and regulations. Then one can expect to gain result in the spiritual life. One still has to become active. And this is what we said, this is what Krishna was telling to Arjuna, that you can't just renounce your duty. You can't renounce your duty. And you come out, you kind of concoct, you speculate, you create your own type of activities and duties. That is not spiritual life. Spiritual life means acting according to guidance of the scriptures. That is spiritual. Not according to our whims. Now I like this, maybe I could try that, maybe I could experiment with something else, and like that. That's not spiritual life. Spiritual life, it's life of full guidance and acting upon those guidance principles and instructions. That's what spiritual life means. So therefore one has to be active. Somehow or other one has to connect, as I said, whatever propensities one has, but for the spiritual process. So, why means the beginning? Because of course, yoga system later on, it's not supposed to be active so much. It's supposed to be just kind of fully in some trance, meditative state. But as we said, at this age, we can just immediately set that aside because that's not going to be possible. How long, and of course for us, let's say you stay somewhere secluded for a while, completely alone, and for how long one can do that? How long can you keep your mobile off? See, confirm. How long can that happen? Then you don't check it. Oh, what is the new message? What is new phone call? What is this? What is that going? Just that. But what to speak of? Not even having a mobile. Of course, that's not even almost possible today. So very, very difficult. So that's why we better engage all kinds of activities in the service of Krishna. So that doesn't mean just this yoga process, but that means also this bhakti process, especially bhakti process. Because we cannot control our mind. You see, actually, the essence of every spiritual process, this is not just the dhyana yoga, this is not just this yoga practice. But every spiritual process, karma, jnana, dhyana, and bhakti, the root of all of those is to control the mind, to befriend the mind. Because if that is not the case, then we won't be able to focus, we won't be able to perform any of those. So mind is the pivotal central point of every yoga practice. So when mind becomes subdued, when mind becomes befriended, then the spiritual practice becomes easy, because then the mind gains the taste, and then it wishes, it likes, let's say it likes to come here to temple. It gets some taste, it finds something useful, finds something even entertaining, finds something beneficial, finds something better than anywhere else. So that means mind is gaining some taste, and then mind will lean towards it. But if that is not the case, then of course, then mind will have so many material impressions, and mind will have so many material leanings, and then it will look for, other impressions that have been impressed earlier. It will look for those, and that means material entanglement. So therefore, initially, whatever distracts us. Okay, let's say mobile, like I gave example of mobile. So mobile, it's actually incredible distraction. If you wouldn't have a mobile, your life would be, 100 times better. I don't know how much you can realize this, but, we didn't have mobiles maybe some 20 years ago. Practically, hardly, very few people had a mobile phone. I was struggling against it, and then finally I was they forced me to have it. I think it was 2009, 10, something like this. I think 2010. Somehow I was managing before, and then it became impossible. Then I was forced. And then just 2 years back, I was still having that simple small phone. Then, I was forced now to have this so-called smartphone. I just have to learn how to live with it. But then the point is, you can't reject it. You can't even, maybe people practically nowadays, they can't think of living without a mobile phone. It's so conditioned. We are so trapped, actually. We are so unfortunate. We think unfortunate. No, you're so unfortunate. You can't live without this, entangling device, contaminating device, actually, disturbing device. We are so unfortunate. But that's what I'm saying. Sometimes back, people were so much more peaceful, so much more focused, so much more sharper, even in memory. Because nowadays, whatever it is, what is, okay, mobile. Everything is on mobile. Everything is on internet. Everything. You can't retain anything practically in your brain. Everyone's brain has atrophied. Yeah. So then, is that really advancement? It really shows, how degrading all the technology practically is, and how we are becoming dependent upon it. But anyway, as I said, okay, fine. Now what to do? Now we are forced, because you have to communicate, you have to be in touch in some ways, and something, So, but then one can still restrict it. Okay, there is a mobile, and I have some addiction, so to say, towards it. So let me use this somehow and connect it to Krishna. So then I try to use this, and I try to somehow just find out more about Krishna and disconnect myself from all kinds of other applications and all other type of messages that come, which are really just distraction, absolutely unnecessary. So trying to restrict slowly everything like this. Reducing things to what is absolutely only necessary. That's why it's said, it's all of those kind of things and gadgets are practically necessary evil. They're evil things, but they are necessary. But then we see, okay, how do I use it for Krishna? Because ultimately everything is Krishna's energy. And as long as the thing in itself, it's not sinful, it can be connected and purified in Krishna consciousness. So then we utilize. So then we work. We adjust whatever tools are there and whatever activities connected to it. We adjust those by connecting them to Krishna. So that's Bhakti Yoga. That is Bhakti Yoga. So then mind can also like this become befriended, can be engaged in Krishna's service, and one by becoming active in Krishna's service, then slowly will start getting taste more and more for spiritual, activities, for spiritual, just direct engagements. So then slowly one will see that all these material things that we were so excited so much earlier about, and which were giving us actually only pain at the end practically, that they're absolutely unnecessary. And we don't have at all to desire any of those. So that's how mind becomes very friendly towards spiritual. Once engaged, gains the taste of that spirituality. So that's why one initially works, one engages his senses, but only for the positive cause. And whenever there is something that is distracting and binding, then one withdraws itself, its senses. That's what we said. It's an example of the tortoise, right? That's an example of the tortoise. The tortoise, Arjuna is asking, who is the Stitadir Muni? Who is the sage, advanced sage? One who can, Krishna explains then one of the qualities that he can exhibit his senses when it's required and he can pull them out. So whenever there is something sinful that we are exposed towards, then we won't exhibit our senses and contemplate and, whatever it is. No, we will withdraw our senses. And then when there is something that it's favorable towards Krishna consciousness, then we exhibit our senses. Then we come forward, then we work, then we utilize, and we engage in Krishna service. So there is a big difference. I told that analogy again, it comes to my mind. Anybody remembers about those dogs and the big tortoise? Anybody remembers that example?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, only one.
Yes, remember, Prabhuji.
Okay, 2.
Yes, Prabhu.
3. See here, nobody. There were wild dogs, and there was a big tortoise. You have this big ocean tortoise, And, it's a horrible story, but it's like... And the dogs came, and they were trying to kill the tortoise, but tortoise withdrew its limbs, within the shell. But still the dogs, because it's a big tortoise, they managed and they pulled through the limbs inside and pulled the limbs out of the tortoise, finally killing the tortoise. It's heavy. It's a horrible example, no? Yeah, okay. It's hope you're not acting as those dogs do. Yeah. So that's what is compared to material energy. Material energy, even sometimes, we carry the impressions in the mind and we are not necessarily exposed directly towards that material energy, material impressions. But after a period of time, the material energy will pull us out. It will pull us out, it will drag us out, it will drag us towards, oh, what is there? Like mobile, what is there to see? What is there to hear? What is there to taste that has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness? So we'll be pulled out like this, viciously. And then we lose our spiritual life. We lose any sanity practically. Just degrade ourselves. We actually commit such kind of spiritual suicide by exposing ourselves to the influence of Maya or illusion. So one has to be extremely cautious. So that's why initially we work. We just see how things can be involved. And as I said, for a sannyasi or somebody who is spiritual, actually he never ceases to work. It's not necessary. It doesn't mean that work is something that is degrading or of some lower kind or so lower level. No. One can always be active in Krishna consciousness. Now the question is only to which extent and in which way, whether it is in a gross way involving the senses or it's even in the subtle way involving the mind and intelligence. One is always active in Krishna consciousness. Essentially, bhakti means jnana and karma combined. That defines bhakti, because bhakti is work with the knowledge. That's what's bhakti. We understand why we are doing what we are doing for the pleasure of Krishna. Focus and pleasure of Krishna. That's all bhakti. That's all bhakti. So we are not ceasing from work, but we are engaging that work in Krishna's service. That is what is important. Still remaining active. Otherwise, what is the point of then saying that we are practicing spiritual life if we can't connect everything to Krishna? What does that mean? I'm practicing spiritual life. I don't know how to connect anything to Krishna, but everything is Krishna's energy. Therefore, it belongs to spiritual. Then he knows to engage everything that is manifested his energy. Spiritual life means knowing how to connect everything back to Krishna. That's what spiritual life means. So then it's active. And then one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of material activity is said to be the means. But then cessation of what? That's cessation of material activities. That means activities. That means not being involved in something that is distracting us from Krishna consciousness. So being able to separate oneself, disconnect oneself from such kind of activity. Okay, any questions on this so far? Because our time is a little bit running and we still have a few commentaries to go through. So any questions on this? What we discussed, engaging the mind, being active, conceptions of spiritual life. What are your conceptions of spiritual life? What do you think? What is it? It's just meditation on nothingness, or what do you think is spiritual life? That's what Krishna is explaining. Yoga means connection. Yoga means to connect, reconnect back to where we were already connected to, or to whom we were connected. That was Krishna. So any questions on this? Okay, then we'll read the commentaries, what the acharyas are saying. Okay. Vishwanath, who's going to read?
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji, you said the example of tortoise and that wild dogs. So sometimes, Prabhuji, the thing is that and you have given the example of phone. So sometimes we have habit of, I have the habit of playing chess and all. So we are start playing and we are going on Maya for ranking purpose, for rating purpose. So that sometimes we undergo on that Maya thing. So how to just protect from these things?
Again, being engaged. Point of spiritual life is being engaged to the extent that you don't have time for anything else. So that means if we make time for other things, that means we are not sufficiently spiritually engaged. Yeah. Because then the mind will look towards whatever tastes it had earlier. Because if mind is fully engaged, you practically have no time to sleep, you have no time to eat or something. There is no even slightest scope for Maya to enter. Then where is the question of being in Maya? Yeah, like if you're always busy, so then how will Maya enter? Like I have that room I'm staying in, and I just make sure fully that mosquitoes can't enter. Yeah. And then they can't enter. But if I'm casual or something, then so many will enter, and then it's a big trouble next day morning and throughout the night, even though I might have mosquito net or something. So it's so much trouble. So then you have to make sure that you don't allow Maya to enter, because she's going to suck your blood. And what you going to do? You're going to suffer. You're going to suffer. You may think being casual, it's too much trouble not to be strict and not to be engaged and not to be cautious. But it's actually more trouble, to suffer. Just imagine when mosquitoes start biting and sucking your blood, and then it's so much disturbance, right? So much disturbance. What to speak when you get dengue or malaria? How much disturbance that is. So isn't it better to be a little cautious? It's better to be a little and prevent that Maya from entering, attracting us from Krishna. So I need so hard is it, keto or this. What if it carries, some disease? What you gonna do then? You get sick and then you're stuck for, weeks down with the viral fevers. So that's a big trouble. Better to be cautious and try to set those activities. We should know that whatever we do separate, that is not engaged for Krishna consciousness, we are taking reaction for it. We have to take reaction ourselves. We are taking pleasure, but we'll have to take reaction also. That's a law of nature. And we are also wasting time. We don't know how much time we have. Any moment we may leave the body. And we don't have taste for Krishna, we'll have to come back. Who knows in what kind of state. So we should be very careful. And we also, another thing is, the mind becomes disturbed. Then next time we're trying to focus on chanting, we're trying to focus on doing service, then mind will convince us that why are you wasting time? It's so easy, just sit down, play some video game or do some nonsense or whatever. No, that's much easier. See something, check the mobile, do this. So then our mind becomes our worst enemy because we have fed it, we have programmed it as such. We can't blame the mind, we can blame only ourselves. So that's why spiritual life, working, connecting things and gaining taste from that. That is the only hope, that's the only process. Engaging that mind, making it favorable. Okay, Harsh?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay,
I just read my example.
huh?
I just read.
Yeah, so what else you want?
Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur
Come here.
commentary. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur commentary. But then the practitioner of Ashtanga Yoga would have to practice Niskam Karma Yoga for his whole life. His verse therefore speaks of the limits of Karma Yoga. For the practitioner of Yoga, Mune, desiring to rise to the stage of steady meditation, Yoga, the cause of his elevation is his action karma, because that purifies his heart. For one who has attained steadiness in meditation, Yoga Arudhyasa, the cause of maintaining that level is cessation, summa of all actions which produce agitation. In other words, the aspirant for steady meditation does not have complete purity of heart.
Yeah, so purity of the heart, that's very interesting. It just purifies one from all the bad qualities. Saga, second.
Sri Ramanujacharya's commentary. Karma Yoga is said to be the means for an aspirant for release who seeks to climb the heights of yoga, that is, the vision of the self. For the same person, when he has climbed the heights of yoga, that is, he is established in yoga, tranquility, that is, freedom from actions, is said to be the means. A man should perform actions until he has attained release, moksha, in the form of the vision of the self. Full release comes only with the fall of the body. The vision of the self referred to here is called moksha by courtesy. When does not become established in yoga? Shri Krishna replies. No? Yes. So,
don't speculate too much.
okay, it's like clearly said here, like if we want to realize like who we are, vision of the self. So karma yoga is there, but karma yoga, according to what I can understand, it's action in Krishna consciousness, like we say, doing action in spirituality. So if we want to gain knowledge, we have to perform action for Krishna in spiritual life, so that we can gain knowledge, and by performing such actions, we'll realize who we are, like how we do seva, like book distribution in the morning. Book distribution, when we do, we get some knowledge, we get purified, and from there we move on forward to the path of self-realization. That's what I can understand.
Okay, very well.
Does this mean that one must practice karma yoga or prescribe Vedic activities all their lives? Apprehending such a question, Lord Krishna sets the parameters for it. Karma yoga leads to knowledge because performing Vedic activities purifies the mind. But once the mind has been purified, one advances to yoga or the science of the individual consciousness, attaining communion with the ultimate consciousness. Then one leaves karma yoga and becomes devoted to meditation. Observe internally with no inclination for external activities which impedes and distracts introspection and reflection. This is said to be the means for spiritual knowledge to mature.
Sri Madhvacharya commentary. The time parameters of Karma Yoga or performance of prescribed Vedic activities is explained by Lord Krishna in this verse. For the person who seeks fulfillment in the performance of actions, the means to fulfillment is prescribed Vedic activities itself, which gives bliss and leads to the final destination of moksha or liberation. It is seen that even those attaining moksha process equanimity of mind as the resultant fruit. Equanimity is eliminating all things from the mind that are not related to Lord Krishna. Even while experiencing the prarabdha karmas or the consequential reactions from actions, the all-comprehensive and conscious presence of equanimity is seen to manifest in some, and weathering out the impact, one remains fixed on activities pertaining to the Supreme Lord. It has therefore been stated that only those who have perceived the perception of the Supreme Lord experience supreme bliss and will their mind fixed in equanimity. But until the elimination of the prarabdha karmas has come, those of superior spiritual intelligence will immerse themselves in Shravanam or hearing and Kirtanam or reciting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna's transcendental qualities and pastimes.
Shri Keshav Kashmiri commentary. If the previous verse is true, then does one have to perform karma yoga or prescribed Vedic activities until death? Lord Krishna clarifies this with the word aruruksho, meaning who aspires. If one is aspiring for Atma Tattva or realization of the soul, then karma yoga is merely a stepping stone until one is established in selfless actions without ego influence. Such actions soon lead to renunciation, which culminates in Dhyana Yoga, or the science of the individual consciousness attaining communion with the ultimate consciousness by meditation. The purport is that an aspirant should perform prescribed Vedic activities until they are securely established in renunciation, which initiates reflection and introspection, accumulating in meditation, which leads to attainment of Atma Tattva.
Does not surrender to me.
You turn it and turn down. It was again.
No, does not surrender. That's what Madhvacharya is saying. Okay, 41. Okay, so as a conclusion, we will reach Srila Prabhupada's purport. He says the process of linking oneself with the Supreme is called yoga. It may be compared to a ladder for attaining the topmost spiritual realization. This ladder begins from the lowest material condition of the living entity and rises up to the perfect self-realization in pure spiritual life. According to various elevations, different parts of the ladder are known by different names, but all in all, the complete ladder is called yoga and may be divided into three parts, namely Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. The beginning of the ladder is called Yoga Rukshu stage, and the highest rung is called Yoga Rudha. Concerning the Eightfold Yoga system, attempts in the beginning to enter into meditation through regulative principles of life and practice of different sitting postures, which are more or less bodily exercises, are considered fruitive material activities. All such activities lead to achieving perfect mental equilibrium to control the senses. When one is accomplished in the practice of meditation, he ceases all disturbing mental activities. A Krishna-conscious person, however, is situated from the beginning on the platform of meditation because he always thinks of Krishna. And being constantly engaged in the service of Krishna, he is considered to have ceased all material activities. So Krishna consciousness process is compared also to the Eightfold Yoga Ashtanga system. And like in the Eightfold Yoga Ashtanga system, one attempts to meditate by different sitting postures and achieving perfect equilibrium to control the senses. So initially one works, as we said, to control the senses. We engage the senses in positive work rather than just seizing everything. But in Krishna consciousness also that is the case, and interestingly Srila Prabhupada points out that from the beginning one is situated on the platform of meditation because he meditates on Krishna. Like whatever I said, whenever we try to engage something in Krishna consciousness, we think, how is this connected to Krishna? So Krishna is already part of meditation. We already think, how can this first of all be connected to Krishna, and how can that also be utilized for Krishna? How can we perform anything and find any connection, whatever. I mean, maybe we can have a little exercise now, just to make this class interactive. Can you mention anything that you think that cannot be connected to Krishna, but it's not sinful? Or can you think of something that you can't conceive of being connected to Krishna? Think a little bit for a few seconds. Think for a few seconds. What is it that you find challenging that you couldn't think that you could connect to Krishna? Like we had Harsh playing chess. What about chess? Can we connect that to Krishna consciousness? Of course, I should be very careful because if I encourage and he may continue playing chess, right? But there is a way to connect it also. There is a way. Okay, one second. We'll mute everyone. Tell him. I'll tell you.
While muted, Prabhuji?
Yes, for 1 second.
Okay.
It was not meant for those kind of just frivolous, intellectual exercises, It's not meant for that. So it had its purpose. So it can be connected. Okay, anything else? Is there anything that you're thinking, like all of you, let's say, all of you cannot live in the temple, right? So then what you're doing the rest of the day? How are you connecting that to Krishna? Can you connect that to Krishna? I think it's pure bhakti. That's a whole different thing. That's not different than the process itself and the goal itself. But you're doing so many other things. You're chanting whole day long. So then you're eating, you're sleeping, you're bathing, you're, I don't know, whatever else you're doing. How do you connecting all of that to Krishna? People claim to be very spiritual. But, how much they're spiritual? 5 minutes every morning, that's it. Haribol, I'm very spiritual. I mean, that's also pretty good. Sometimes people just say once a Sunday or once a Janmashtami we come to temple and we are very spiritual. Is it? Spiritual means 24 hours a day. That's been spiritual. Which other? There was that, was a funny incident. There was one Swami and he was preaching in Philippines. And there was one lady, so she said to him, Hare Krishnas, it's like, but my religion is better than yours. And then he said, how come? And she said, I just have to go once a week, whereas you every morning you have to attend all the programs and everything. So how is that better? If you would have a taste, you would be doing it 24/7, so to say. You wouldn't just go once a blue moon. If you like doing something, right, you're doing it all the time, no? It's not just when you have to. So that's spiritual life. So then how we are connecting everything. So then what kind of religious process is this? You do something, you just do it 3 times a day. That's also pretty good. At least it's 3 times a day, But real religious process, 24, there's no moment. Like we said, there is no even slightest scope for Maya to enter and disturb us away from Krishna. That's a real religious process. That is Sanatana Dharma. That's real Dharma. Otherwise, we are not within the scope of the Dharma. We are somewhere else. We are in Maya. No? So, okay, anything that anyone struggles. Okay, Harshit, follow.
Agnosticism and this.
So that's complete Maya. That cannot be connected to Krishna. It's all rubbish. Just kick it out. Simple, bas. That's sinful. That's sinful. I said something that's not sinful. That is sinful. That is sinful because it denies Krishna. That's atheism. Haribol. I said whatever, it's not sinful.
Any scientific or mathematical activity?
We can connect. Can be connected. Vedas are full of science. What means Vedas? Vedas are, everything is science. Science means you apply, you get a result. That's science. But again, connected in such a way that aims at God. Why were the altars there? Why was the astronomy and Jyotish there? Everything was meant to connect. Why was the determination of positive and negative or auspicious or inauspicious timings there? It was all utilized for determining when to do pujas, when to do yagyas, everything was in connection to God. Anything else? Watching, it's already Mahabharata in our mind, so it should remind you of Krishna, no? Don't watch something else. No. Okay, maybe you can think about it next Thursday, huh?
Enviness.
Enviness, it's negative, it's sinful, you can't connect that to Krishna. That's the only so-called quality it can't be connected to Krishna. Because enviness is destructive. And therefore it's sinful. You want to destroy devotees or
Which is mode of passion?
Mode of passion can be converted into enthusiasm. So that's positive.
Prabhuji,
Passion, even if you are in the mode of passion, use that passion for Krishna. You can be active. You can go on book distribution and passionately, inspire people to take the books. Might not be the best medium, but it is medium that can be connected to Krishna. Or, you can do so many other things in the mode of passion. You won't get the best results, but you'll get something. You become purified. Yes?
Prabhuji, forcefully living with non-devotees.
Yeah, but that's forcefully living, but why forcefully, that's not positive again. Non-devotees means it's a negative. It's sinful, right?
Yes.
Then again, I said not sinful things can't be connected to Krishna because they're opposed to Krishna. So I'm saying about other things which are not sinful. Even then you can somehow, influence things in such a way that they don't become so sinful or become somewhat purified, and they can also get some taste by giving them suprashadam or exposing to some sounds, spiritual. So they'll get some benefit in the course of time that, they might become more favorable. There's also ways. Okay, so anyway, just to summarize, so in this verse, basically the action is stressed, but action in Krishna consciousness. That is essential. It can be done and should be done for sake of advancing in spiritual life, not just renunciation renunciation in ignorance. That is something that is condemned. That was also discussed in last verse. So being active for sake of purification. Okay, any final questions or something? Then we'll stop. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Gaur Premanande.
thank you.